Is a state government bureaucrat who's managed to stay under the radar throughout a long career. But according to a 4-month Larry Barker investigation, nobody noticed this high-ranking public employee had been fudging his time card every day for years. It's a scheme that has cost taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars.
I'm very concerned.
It's something that shouldn't have been done, Larry.
I've not seen this before.
Just when you think you've seen it all, along comes someone with a creative way to bamboozle the system. He's an unfamiliar mid-level bureaucrat working a desk job at a small office at a state healthcare agency here in Santa Fe.
Mike Carrillo is Deputy HR Manager at the Aging and Long-Term Services Department. A News 13 review of state payroll records shows Carrillo padded his timesheet every day for 4 years and ended up pocketing more than $62,000 in unsubstantiated, dubious payments. And even though every one of his time cards showed obvious red flags, nobody noticed. In fact, despite all the checks and balances in state government, no one questioned Mike Carrillo's time. Not 3 cabinet secretaries, not the eagle-eyed bean counters at the Department of Finance, and not the HR folks at State Personnel.
This is not something we would have caught in our normal course of business.
Justin Najaka is New Mexico's State Personnel Director.
This is a unique situation that occurred, and it is not common practice.
Who is this guy? Well, after a long career at the Department of Corrections, Mike Carrillo retired in 2002 and started drawing an annual $77,000 PERA pension. But his life of leisure was short-lived. 4 years later, Mike Carrillo was back working in state government, this time as a $60,000 a year employee at the State Aging and Long-Term Services Department.
And because Carrillo returned to work before the legislature prohibited double dipping, Mike Carrillo is allowed to collect his PERA retirement and his state paycheck from his new job.
And even though Mike Carrillo's job at Aging is a full-time position, the newly hired HR specialist was allowed to set his own schedule. Carrillo decided he only wanted to work mornings, 4 hours a day. Sweet deal number 1. This past summer, Miles Copeland was appointed Aging and Long-Term Services Cabinet Secretary.
Supposed to be a full-time employee. Was he working full-time?
He was not.
Why not?
That's a great question, Larry, and not one that I have a great answer to.
Is that a problem from your perspective?
That is a problem from our perspective, yes. The agency has indicated by having a full-time position that there is a full 40 hours worth of work to do by that employee.
Whose decision was that to work half-time?
I believe, Larry, that former cabinet secretaries had made that decision. It's not one that we should have made.
And it's not the only questionable decision at Aging. In early 2011, Mike Carrillo started padding his time card. Every day for 4 years, he bumped up his payroll sheet with a few extra hours. Some days it might be an hour and a half, sometimes 2, and occasionally more.
Now, state regs require documentation for extra hours. However, Mike Carrillo failed to justify a single minute of the more than 1,800 hours he claimed as extra time. And even though nobody at Aging knew exactly what he did to earn all that money, no one questioned hundreds of dubious discrepancies.
That's sweet deal number 2.
If an employee works extra hours over and above their scheduled hours, how should that be documented by the employee?
Well, first that should be authorized by the supervisor on a case-by-case basis, and it should be documented in the employee's timesheet for the hours that they actually worked.
Did you know that he actually worked those extra hours? Was there any documentation that he worked them?
There was not documentation, and to your point, I was operating on the belief that he was working the amount of time that he said he was.
So how did Mike Carrillo get paid so much for so long without anyone raising a red flag? Well, News 13 has learned it was a payroll scheme approved 4 years ago by the department's cabinet secretary.
According to an August 2011 email from Mike Carrillo to then Cabinet Secretary Rita Ward, Carrillo asked for additional compensation because he, quote, spends a lot of hours in the afternoon responding to emails and answering phone calls. Secretary Ward's response, quote, I want you to continue with these activities. With cabinet level approval, Mike Carrillo racked up tens of thousands of dollars in authorized extra hours. Over the next 4 years, Mike Carrillo's time cards were routinely approved without question by Secretaries Ward, Gino Rinaldi, and current Secretary Miles Copeland. That's sweet deal number 3.
When he put in those extra hours and you signed off on his time card, did you know whether he was working hours or not?
I believe that he was, but I did not know.
Is that the way state government works, where you just kind of trust the employee that maybe they're working and maybe they're not?
No, it's not the way that state government should work, Larry.
That is a problem, and that is totally inappropriate. It is important that cabinet secretaries not authorize this type of blanket approval, and if they have, then that practice should stop.
So what does Mike Carrillo have to say? Well, he did not return any of our phone calls, so we caught up with him at his state agency office.
Do you have anything to say to explain the timesheets? No.
I don't think you guys are fair in your story, so I have nothing to say.
Following News 13's investigation, Secretary Copeland pulled the plug on all of Mike Carrillo's sweet deals.
We want folks to have confidence in our systems, so we've changed that so that it's not anymore him simply claiming that he's working extra hours. Now we know because he does it here in the office.
Larry Barker, KRQE News 13.